Every force of evil that the Power Rangers had to be reckoned with will be ranked on my list of my top 10 or so best villains of Power Rangers. Though this is a belated video for Halloween, however. I welcome all of those who are evil. Anthony Mars Jr. on PRLostGalaxy2014 with a brand new commentary podcast on TerraVenture, and I bring you all to podcast episode 112 here on TerraVenture, presented by the Morphin Megaverse Power Rangers Facebook group, and onwards and so forth. Well, Halloween is over. Today is at the time when this video was made, before ahead of time, was November 1st, 2014, when this was pre-recorded. And for a belated Halloween-themed podcast, I want to talk about a podcast that I really wanted to do in regards of villains of Power Rangers. For those that have seen my video about actors in Power Rangers that would later soon to become the Rangers' greatest nemesis, or least threatening, those villains, however, were indeed the villains behind such roles like Vernon Wells as Ransig and Hilary Shepard as Divatox in that video last time, and Paul Freeman as Ivan Ooze in the Mighty Morphin movie. I did discuss about actors that we would soon see in Power Rangers, or before Power Rangers' time, would end up being in the show anyway. And then when I thought about it, according to my schedule for podcasts, I wanted to go ahead and talk about villains in Power Rangers, especially the Americanized villains. But I mostly have more fun. I have more fondage of the American-produced villains than the villains that are from their respective Sentais. Because what I like about the American villains in Power Rangers is that they are so complex, they are so likable. But there are some villains that were from each of Power Rangers' respective Sentais that were good, and some that were kind of lame and bad and underrated, underwhelming. But over the course of the first 20 years, Power Rangers have had some really great villains and a very colorful but evil and dark cast of villains. But according to my ranking, I'm going to have to pick who are my all-time favorite villains in Power Rangers instead of going by what people want me to go by, instead of looking at other people's lists, just to cheat, and looking at who are the best villains and who are the worst villains. When necessarily there are villains that do still please me to this point, and there are villains that don't please me. And at the time when I was about to make this podcast, recording about Power Ranger villains, best and worst, I wanted to go by their respective gender. Male villains for one half of the podcast, and female villains on the second half. But it would be a bit sexist if I rank each Power Ranger villain by gender 10 to 1, or 1 to 10 in backwards, if you may say, that I would go ahead and list those villains off, who are the best and who are the worst by gender. But I don't want to do that, because then I would feel that there's something about those villains by their respective genders knowing as humanity as we know it, there are only two genders, male and female, so it's not like I have to go by the respective gender, or I can just mix it up by, boy, girl, man, woman, you name it. But actually, instead of a top 10 list, how about a top 20 Power Rangers villains list? Because, the 20th anniversary of Power Rangers is almost over. Since Legendary Battle is almost upon us, yes, I understand that battle, the Legendary Battle in Super Mega Force is, yes, hereby disappointing and all, but the 20th anniversary still is almost over. So I think I need to do a top 20. And I know this is going to be a very long podcast as usual. I do too many long rambles about Power Rangers, myself in general, you know, for the last 2 years on this channel, and I think it's about time I wrap this up for the last half of my channel's second season. Since Season 2 of PRLostGalaxy2014 is almost over, by the beginning of Season 3, I'm going to rename these series of podcast videos to something else, and I will let you know by the beginning of Season 3 next year and around Power Rangers Dino Charge's start. And when the new 39th Super Sentai series will come out in Japan as well. So let's go ahead and look at the top 20, my opinion, and by my perspective, my top 20 best Power Rangers villains. Although some of them are the worst, and I'm going to go by my listing of who are the worst of Power Rangers, is evil, one of the worst of evil of Power Rangers as well. Well, the top 20 best villains and the top 20 worst. Actually, I don't think there are hardly been, let's just get to the list anyway. So I'm going to go with the worst of, actually, let me start with the best first. I'm messing up here. My apologies to those that are evil, that likes villains of Power Rangers more than the Rangers themselves. And for those that heard my evil laugh a little bit in the opening statement of this video, I did, however, try to make an evil laugh, like going, "Mwah!" I tried, but knowing my evil laughs, they're not good. So, my apologies there. So, let's go with the top 20 best villains in Power Rangers. And it doesn't matter if it has to be by gender, male or female, like I originally wanted this video to turn out to be. Let's just get on with this anyway. Number 20 for best villains in Power Rangers, I'm going to have to go with, this villain. Now, believe it or not, this villain is one of the best of Power Rangers that has to offer. And I think the 20th best would have to go to Fraks from Power Rangers Time Force. Well, it doesn't matter if it has to be a top 10 or a top 20, top 15 or whatever, but Fraks. I'm starting with him at number 20 because I could have had him at the top, but instead I decided to have him at the bottom best. What makes Fraks so unique, although despite the fact that he was one of the leading villains from the Sentai, the Time Force was based on Time Ranger, Fraks was actually, from his origin, when he was Dr. Fraks and when he discovered Ransik and gave him the cases of the serum that would keep him from becoming this horrified mutant, and then when he wanted to one day vowed that robots will reign over mutants, and him making more robots to piss Ransik off. That's one of the things I've always liked about Fraks' backstory and his character, is that one of the things I've always liked about Time Force, although Time Force, from the start, was not my favorite season of Power Rangers from the time when it aired. I didn't really like Time Force for what it was, but I did like the villains inside of the Time Force, season because of Ransik's backstory and Fraks' backstory. Well, when knowing Nadira and Gluto are waste of space in the season. Because this season was more of Ransik and Fraks, while the Time Force Rangers had their own side of the story arc of the season, their own story of the season. But the villains seemed to be more interesting in Time Force because of, with the deliberation issues and also topics that Power Rangers never covered before from the start of, like, let's say Mighty Morphin. But knowing Time Force, this was a season that cherished a lot of people's hearts of Power Rangers. Other than in Space or Lost Galaxy or Zeo, Time Force was one of those cherished seasons of Power Rangers whose topics and storylines really captured and innovated people's hearts. And saying about themes of racism and deliberation, predestination versus choice. But the theme of predestination was also previously carried in Power Rangers in Space, but we'll get to that with the following villain from that season and later on in the list, don't you worry. And Fraks, there always had been some prejudice toward mutants with Fraks, and robots and prejudice with Ransik. I've always liked Fraks' design. I even liked his voice actor, Edward Frierson, or actually Eddie Frierson, according to how he's credited as in terms of voice actors of Power Rangers. I might go ahead, the next list I'll do, I might go ahead and do a list of the all-time best and greatest voice actors in Power Rangers list the next time I come back and do that, and rank the list of voice actors in Power Rangers like 10-1 or 15-1 or like this 20-1. Because, well, knowing the voice actors of the Disney era and the Neil Saban era, most of the majority of the voice actors in today's Power Rangers are vastly unknown to me and to many others. But the voice actors that were around during the original Saban era for Mighty Morphin and the Wild Force, they're the most recognizable. And thinking about Fraks, his motive was very sympathetic compared to Rancic's, but I don't think Rancic's plan was very sympathetic. I don't suppose. Well, yeah, you get the point there. At number 19 on my list of best Power Ranger villains, well, the top 20 best in all time, I would go with, at number 19, according to my list, I have Diabolico from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. Now, don't get me wrong. Although Lightspeed Rescue, like Time Force and a couple of seasons after that I don't hardly like that as much, Lightspeed Rescue had only one interesting villain, and that was Diabolico, in my opinion. And Queen Bashira, yes, she was also interesting. She's also on this list too, and I have her at number 18 once when I get to her. The reason why I like Diabolico, okay, there's about 3 things about him, I suppose. Even though the villains in Lightspeed are boring and all, even according to Linkara, but the villains, there are only 2 villains in Lightspeed I do like, and of that is Diabolico and Queen Bashira. Diabolico, I like him because, well, there's just so much a kinship to his design to me when it comes to his design being reminiscent to Goldar, if Goldar was a demon himself in Mighty Morphin, when not entirely really. Because, in fact, when I thought about Diabolico, when I just look at his, the shade of gold to his costume and his overall character aesthetic, he just reminds me of if Goldar was a demon. Just thinking about him. And I really liked the fact that one of the high points about Lightspeed's first half was that Diabolico was actually the main leading villain of the season until it was dropped automatically around the time of the Titanium Rangers joining with the Lightspeed team, and when Ryan got the Cobra tattoo, and when Diabolico was defeated by the Lightspeed Solar Zord combination. He stopped being the main focal villain, and that's what made Queen Bashira and Olympia's big focal villains of Lightspeed Rescue. I also liked his story arc, although his story arc had to be on hiatus in between episodes. But by the time of his resurrection by Lokai and Vipra in the episode When Time Runs Out, I think that was the name of the episode when the Rangers had to that episode when they couldn't morph and they had those poisonous vines on their morphers before Time Runs Out. Yeah, that episode, for those that have seen it. And I even liked the Diabolico when he was a super demon in the episode, which is also one of my all-time top 5 favorite episodes of Lightspeed Rescue, Rise of the Super Demons. That's one of my favorite episodes of Lightspeed. Although, again, Lightspeed Rescue is not my favorite series, regardless, again, speaking, but that is still a badass episode, especially when seeing him and Olympius as super demons. That really got me pumped. And especially that Megazord battle. When the Super Train and the Omega Megazords, yeah, it sucks that they had to get trashed by the 2, but hey, they will also be remembered as one of my all-time favorite Megazords from that series. And by the way, one of the many reasons why I like Diabolico is because of the voice actor, Neil Kaplan. Now, Neil Kaplan has been around with Power Rangers since, I suppose, I can't remember. I think it was, I have to look at his IMDb and Ranger Wiki article and what voice roles he did before he did Diabolico and Gluto and Time Force. I was about to say Lightspeed Force or something. in a combination of Lightspeed and Time Force together. No offense. Sorry about that. And it's just hearing how deep Neil can do the voice of Diabolico. It just brings chills to me, and what makes him my favorite villain. And I have nothing much else to say, but hey, he's still one of my favorite villains, though. Just regardless, because of the voice actor and how he's portrayed. That's one of the many. I guess those are my reasons why I like Diabolico. And number 18 is Queen Bashira from also Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. So yes, I'm doing 2 villains from Lightspeed back to best on my best list. Because Queen Bashira, she's the only female villain in Lightspeed that I like the most because of her. Well, actually, I only liked it. She didn't get really interesting. Well, Queen Bashira didn't get really interesting until the last 4 episodes. Because when I seen her in her her disembodied form, floating around the demonic lair of hers, the demon's lair, wherever it's called, the underworld or so. I've always thought that Bashira was more powerful when she was in her final form, when merging her, power with Viper's power, and especially the way how she knocked the Red Ranger's helmet off, and the way how she took control of, the way how she controlled her own son, Olympius, and Diabolico to, become super demon, or actually Olympius turned Diabolico into to his pawn, and took his heart out, jewel, whatever. And I thought Bashira was just really cutting slack on the Rangers, and making her plan much diverse to deal with. So yeah. And I think her final form is more powerful than her original form, because her original form was kind of stiff and stale from in my opinion to me, because the way how she looks. And number 17 is Zeltrax from Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Why is he on my list of one of my favorite villains in Power Rangers? Well, it's simple. I was about to say Diabolico again, sorry. Zeltrax. What I always liked about Zeltrax was his design. And what made him so complex for Dino Thunder compared to Mesogog, because he is just, badass. And I also like the way how they portrayed him in the Power Rangers version as a rival to Tommy. Because when I think about Dino Thunder, it does give me lots of shades to Mighty Morphin. Actually, only the first season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because of the dinosaur motif. And when I look at Zeltrax fighting Tommy, it gives me so many shades of when Goldar used to fight Tommy, when he was either the Green Ranger or the White Ranger. Every time I look at Zeltrax when he fights Tommy, up to this point, as the Dino Thunder Black Ranger, and it just makes me want to have that nostalgia, that Mighty Morphin nostalgia gushing into my blood every time I see Zeltrax fight Tommy. And also his backstory of him being a friend of Tommy's and Anton Mercer until he went, until he dispersed into something as Smitty, something. I forgot his name, because I haven't seen Dino Thunder in a long time now, in almost a couple of years. But looking at his character in his ultra, in his super mode, in the second half of Dino Thunder, it made me want to even like his character even more. Also, I never knew something, according to the Ranger Wiki, about Zeltrax's costume being used in Dino Thunder. From what I heard on the Ranger Wiki, they wanted to use Zeltrax's costume for if Catherine was featured in Power Rangers Dino Thunder as Tommy's wife or something. She would, Catherine would become evil after something would happen, and because, according to the Auto Ranger equivalent of Zeltrax, Zeltrax was actually in the Sentai version was a woman. So I like the way how they did a gender bender twist to his costume by making him a male villain than a female villain. Because now, suppose if Elsa, the Americanized villain for Dino Thunder, had this costume, that would have been a little messed up. But my apologies of me being sexist on that, but that's just my opinion. And I really do like his shade of black because it's very grim and dark of him. Because he just always, Zeltrax was always so visually interesting to me. Always has and always will. Number 16 is the Messenger from Power Rangers Megaforce. Now, the Messenger, believe it or not, was just a one-off villain for 2 episodes leading to Super Megaforce. And it sucks that he didn't really have much to fare in Megaforce, but if he was in Super Megaforce and then was reincarnate to attack the Mega Rangers, I would have been okay with it. Because every time I look at the Messenger, especially how he's designed actually from Ghost Ager and his Power Rangers equivalent, and it's very odd from the look of the Messenger's design. When I look at him, do you have that feeling when you look at the Messenger's face and his design? Why does he look like the Zeon mobile suit from the Gundam franchise? In fact, he does look like a Gundam. No offense, regardless, but it's just the way how his face looks. He looks like that Zeon mobile suit. He looks like a Zeon mobile suit when I think of it. And also being the foreshadowing, being a sneak preview of what yet came for Super Megaforce, which is the Armada, and the way how he was tearing the Rangers apart, and the way how he disabled the Mega Rangers' Megaforce powers and their power cards, rendering them useless, cutting them off from their power. Yeah, I really liked that, but it sucks that the Messenger didn't last. I hate to see him go like that. Yeah. Number 15. At number 15 on my favorite, on my top 20 favorite Power Rangers villain list, is General Havoc from Power Rangers Turbo. Okay, where do I begin with General Havoc? Okay. General Havoc, I have always liked him. I think he could have been more potential as the leading villain of Turbo than Divatox, according to what I heard from Linkara, because when you look at General Havoc, he should have been the main villain of Turbo. And Divatox would have been second in command of General Havoc's forces. Because from what I heard, because knowing General Havoc and Divatox in the American series, they're brother and sister of evil, just like Rita and Rito and Mighty Morphin, brother and sister of evil. And what I really liked about General Havoc, although his Metallosaurus is not as impressive as Serpentera, but I still like the homage of Mechagodzilla to his Metallosaurus, though, is that, General Havoc was very devious in his plan of capturing the Rangers Turbo Megazord and bringing it to Divatox's space base, sorry. And and also capturing the Phantom Rangers as Ruby. I really liked that diverse plan. It was really devious of him to do that, and that was one of the dark. This is why episodes The Darkest Day all the way to Clash of the Megazords was one of Turbo's darkest episodes within of all the Power Rangers. Although Turbo may not be a great series, but there were some good episodes that really captured the charm of Turbo, while the rest of every episode of Turbo, up till the first episode after the movie and all, and Honey, I Shrunk the Rangers and episodes like that, were not that great. Not even Trouble by the Slice. I'll talk about that later in another video. But sorry, I gotta get on topic with the villains here. And when I think of General Havoc, he would later foreshadow to what other villain in Power Rangers, or two actually, that would be the most devious among most of the Power Rangers, because of his motive and his plan of conquering. Although I hate to see General Havoc leave, but although we do get to see him in the first episode, where all the villains of the United Alliance of Evil would be part of this, gathering with Dark Spectre, until they encounter a Red Ranger. But we'll talk about that when we get to Astronema a little bit, when I talk to her if she's on this list, but she is. But I'm not going to tell you where she is on this list. But anyway, General Havoc is a great villain, but I wish he had more episodes in Turbo than he already had, and about 4 or 5 episodes, and then that was about it. That's all. Nothing more to say. At number 14, and number 14 is Ecliptor from Power Rangers in Space. Before you know, knowing me for me being more of a Lost Galaxy fan, before there was Villamax, there was this guy. I've always liked the Ecliptor. I liked how loyal he was to Astronema. And also his rivalry with Dark Conda, yeah, I really liked him too for that. And him being more of a father figure to Astronema, you know, as the princess of all evil that he worships. I even liked his different modes. I liked the way how he faced off the Rangers, mainly the Red Ranger. I liked, even though what was one of the shocking blows in his most focused episode, the Impenetrable Web, I did like the way how he turned red and how he destroyed the Delta Megazord. Although I hated it a little back then when I had to hate to see him destroy the Delta Megazord, because the Delta Megazord was one of my favorites of In Space for Megazords, and it just sucks to see him destroy it like that. And it's just, there's something else about Ecliptor that I really like, is the shades of green and black to his costume. Were really well done with those from over at Toei for when they did the Sentai that In Space was based on Mega Ranger. It's really cool of his encrypted, cybernetic design, and also the cyber design of his costume was also impressive. I like that. I've always liked the way how his face looks. He just looked really badass the way how he looks and how he's designed. I don't have anything else to say about Ecliptor, but I just really like his design. That's all I have to say. In fact, akin to Ecliptor, at number 13 is Villamax from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Again, my favorite season of Power Rangers, mind you. Like Ecliptor, Villamax was also as loyal as loyal to Trakina, and as well as being a father figure to him. So yes, there are what I really like about In Space and Lost Galaxy is that, well, mainly for the villains, they are so akin to each other. Well, except for the early villains of Lost Galaxy, consisting of Furio, Tretron, and Scorpius. But Villamax, I've always liked his character. I really liked him a lot. And although I really liked how his character was about to change at the end of the season when he saw Trakina, send an entire horde of Stingwingers with bombs strapped, and told her that what she was doing was dangerous when she was still under Devion's control. Yeah, I liked that. And during part 2, which marked his demise within Power Rangers, all the Power Rangers, I really hated to see him go. But I would have loved to see Villamax retain a human form at least, or so, because that would have been cool if Villamax stayed around for the final episode, reformed as a human, and fight it alongside the Rangers to stop Trakina. Well, that's how I would have done Lost Galaxy for its finale. But what we got in Journey's End and Lost Galaxy's finale as a whole is good. Is good enough. But that's just my theory again. Sorry with me, my harkening of fan fiction here. But I just didn't... Well, although I did like how he was trying to break loose of his evil personality, and how he was refusing to do Trakina's bidding when she wanted to use her ship to blast all the shuttles that were in front of her, heading to Miranoi. I really liked that plan. Hell, even the training montage. Now, speaking of which, when I will do an episode review on the Lost Galaxy episode that was more of a Trakina focused episode, Heir to the Throne, I will talk about my feelings on the training montage of the episode, and what piece of music would have fitted there instead of the orchestrational music that they used for the training montage of the episode. Mind you, don't worry. And I'll tell you how I felt about that. But anyway, he does remind me a lot of Ecliptor, but he's more of a different type of Ecliptor type character. And what I've also did not notice about his face design, his face. When I look at Villamax's face, believe it or not, for those that are fans of another Tokusatsu produced production, Sheriff Galvan or whatever. I think that's what it was called. It does, Villamax's head and face does remind me of a Gavon helmet from the Sheriff Gavon franchise, I suppose. That's the name of the series. And yes, that's like one of those shades there, because when they did this in Gingaman, when they created the Sambash character, although Villamax's Sentai counterpart was a lame duck villain, but although I did not like Villamax's counterpart in Gingaman, but the way how I just rather prefer the Villamax and portrayal of what he was in Power Rangers more than in the Sentai version. Because let's face it, as much as I still don't like the Sentai Lost Galaxy was based on Gingaman, and in the tone of the way how they portrayed its villains, I did not like the way how they portrayed Villamax in the Sentai being a lame duck villain who doesn't keep up with his promises with Captain Zahab, aka Captain Mutiny. So yeah, you get my point there. And number 13 is Dark Conda from Power Rangers in Space as well. So yes, so I'm doing a back-to-back of villains from Power Rangers, well, in Space and Lost Galaxy back-to-back, but who are the best and all that. But Dark Conda, he is at number 13. And behind him will be his Lost Galaxy predecessor, which I will get to in a moment with him. Dark Conda was always one of my favorite villains alongside Astronema, Ecliptor, and the Sakura Rangers as well, because he's just badass like Ecliptor, but badass in his alternate right. And when I look at him, he is just, he wants to manipulate Astronema and Ecliptor and Dark Spectre. He wants to overthrow Ecliptor and Dark Spectre and Astronema. And I even like the different changes that he went through, and also him, having different lives. And after one life he's defeated, the next life he is coming back, and then once his next life is defeated, he comes back again. I really like the way how he resurrects himself so much. He's like Dark Conda is such a devious, unstoppable force for a brilliant being like him, because he doesn't want to give up what he's doing, and he wants to continue doing what he does best. And also, like I stated about my opinion on Ecliptor, about him and his rivalry with Dark Conda, he really was, they just can't stand each other. Just like as much as Diabolico and Olympius can't stand each other, nor can Rancic and Fraks. And as well as, I suppose, I can't think of any other villains of the Neo Saban era that have had rivalries against each other, but Mystic Force with Korag and, never mind. Again, like some other villains, I don't have anything else to say about Dark Conda, but he's just a badass villain. At number 12... like what I said about Ecliptor and Villamax, Dark Conda and his Lost Galaxy predecessor at number 12, Deviat, is just also akin to each other. Of all the villains of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Deviat has always been one of my favorites. And just like Dark Conda, he has a different alternate form. And he just looks so badass when he just faces the Rangers off, especially in the episode Enter the Lost Galaxy when he mutated. That was one of the things I've always liked about that episode. Well, although the Lost Galaxy story arc is so pointless, I still liked the Mutant Deviant versus Ranger fight, because it was so badass. Although the editing, although the voice acting was a bit pointless sounding a little, but it was still great. And I also liked what I liked about Deviat's motive when he first came into Lost Galaxy was, presenting the Scorpius of the three most fearsome considered Zords ever created, and which, by the way, consist of the Stratoforce, Centaurus Megazords, and the Zenith Carrier Zord, but I don't think they are really that fearsome. But when the Rangers reformed them for the side of good and not evil again, that's when Deviat lost total control of his plan, and then his next plan in motion was to overthrow Scorpius and to use Trachina's cocoon so he can mutate. I really liked his story arc there for that too, because it just sounds really splendid and very, very devious. Because what I really like about Deviat's name, and one of the main things I like about his character is his name, and being referring to as devious as he is, because I really like the name Deviat a lot because it sounds great, because it matches his overall motive of being the most fearsome, overthrowing, manipulative villain around in Power Rangers. And I also like the way how he and Shrekina have a rivalry for power of evil, evil power and trying to overthrow each other. I really liked that too, a lot. Number 11. At number 11, there are plenty of villains in Power Rangers. I kind of skipped. They were my favorite because based on his designs and portrayal. I forgot a couple of villains. At number 12 is Master Vile from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Season 3, or all of Mighty Morphin. Because I think Master Vile was like the ultimate leading villain of Mighty Morphin. We may have Rita Repulsa, we may have Lord Zed, we may have Rita Revolto, but this is the ultimate granddaddy of all villains of Mighty Morphin, and of that is Master Vile. Although he only lasted for a couple of episodes, from the three-parter Master Vile in the Metallic Armor all the way to Rangers in Reverse in the first, episode of the Alien Ranger arc. But he really, what I really liked about Master Vile was his plan of doing what Lord Zed failed to do within the second season of Mighty Morphin, and of that was reversing time. Although the plan didn't work at first, but I really did like the way how he came off to see the plan successfully than Zed ever did back in season 2, and that's one of the things I liked about Master Vile. He knows how to get things done ahead of time, and whatever else I can describe about him. And I also liked one of the things I always liked about Master Vile that is so appealing is his design and how he is just very. It's just I don't know what to say about his design. I suppose I just don't know what to say about him, really. And but although we know there is a three-parter in the third season of the show that has his name in it, and also the Metallic Armor, which have no interest to be referenced throughout the three-parter, but he is just, I just liked it how calculating he is with his plan, and it just really works out very well for the best. And number 10 is Zen Aku from Power Rangers Wild Force, on my list of top 20 best villains in Power Rangers. Zen Aku. Okay, where do I put my finger on this guy? Because Zen Aku is badass. I have to grant you that. Although he's pretty much the only villain in Wild Force I ever liked. Although I haven't seen Wild Force in a long time, but he is just badass when it comes to think of it. It's just based on how fierce he is, how quick he is against the Rangers. He steals the Rangers' Wild Zords to make his, have his own Wild Zords on his side to oppose against the Rangers. I really like Zen Aku a lot. I really like him a lot. Instead of other than his Ranger equivalent Merrick, the Lunar Wolf Ranger, I really like his. I really liked him as a badass villain. Now, suppose if we can imagine Wild Force, instead of having the full team without Merrick, we could have just kept Zen Aku throughout the rest of Wild Force. Then Wild Force would have been a little interesting compared to what we already have with Wild Force with its acting and writing chops, and then I would have been fine with the series. But based on how much I still don't like Wild Force as a season of Power Rangers, it's because of how it played itself out, and how it was scored, and how it was everything else about it. Because there was just one of the only reasons why I liked the Wild Force was this guy. It was this guy, because him and his Megazord, the Pretazord. His Pretazord was one of the many reasons why I elected him from the get-go as well, and him and his lone wolf personality, being very unakin to the other orgs who have their own plan to overthrow the universe, and as well as the Power Rangers and Princess Shayla, and then also him capturing Princess Shayla. Although I hate Princess Shayla and her character as a mentor to the Rangers, and I just think he just really had a great motive going. One episode at a time, he steals each of the Rangers, each of the Rangers' respective wild Zords by the respective animal crystal, like, you know, the elephant Zord, the giraffe Zord, and the bear Zords, I suppose if he did. Because, well, let's face it, I haven't seen Wild Force in a long time, again speaking, so how should I know? And just seeing him steal those Zords was just badass. I don't know what else to say, but Zed Aku, great villain. I'm so glad he's on my list of best Power Ranger villains ever. Now, for the past 10, villains of Power Rangers, I haven't even got to talk about any of the female ones, because there are a lot of them to be left desired. But again, well, we'll get to them as soon as I get to the near end of the best list of villains and get on with the worst. At number 9 for my top 20 best villains in Power Rangers, I would have to go with Goldar from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, all 3 seasons, plus Zeo, and there you go. Goldar, the original leading general of Power Ranger villains, worked for Rita Repulsa, then Lord Zed, then Rita and Zed all together. And then him and his shenanigan combination of chemistry with Rito, yes, that's one of the reasons why I like Goldar. And his rivalry with Tommy as the Green or White Ranger. That's one of the things I liked about Goldar. I really liked his motive in the first season. In the first season, one of the things I liked about Goldar was, in the 2-part episode that would have been the end of Power Rangers, when Power Rangers was originally supposed to have 40 episodes in the first season, Doomsday. I liked the way how he had the Doomtron, I think that's what it was called, I suppose, and to destroy the Rangers' Zords, and as well as tearing up buildings of Angel Grove. Although with limited Zoo Ranger footage included, notwithstanding, and also, and also the 2 different forms of his that are standard. His wingless form and his winged form when Rita had to, although I don't see why the hell did Rita had to take away Goldar's wings throughout the first season for some reason. I mean, it's unknown to be clear, because Rita should have never took Goldar's wings for his battle stances against the Rangers, because he did look, I liked the Goldar when he had wings, and because he just looked really powerful with the wings and with the sword to hold around. I mean, he still looked like that in Zoo Ranger, but in some episodes of Zoo Ranger, he would appear with his wings and not appear with his wings. I just did not like what Rita did there, because it just freaking sucks to see him without his wings, because he still looked cool with his wings than without them. And then also, in terms of villains in Mighty Morphin, there should have been a good villainy love triangle between him and Scorpina, like, in Zoo Ranger. But hey, I mean, I've been watching more of Zoo Ranger and Mighty Morphin equally, so I have to compare with the Zoo Ranger villains versus the Mighty Morphin season 1 villains and the way how they're portrayed there. I mean, portrayed here than they did in Zoo Ranger there back 20 some years ago. So I think they are portrayed less likely and equal to being one of the best. I guess you may not know what I'm talking about, but just the way how they're just portrayed differently. And also one of the many reasons why I've also liked the Goldar was, like I stated about Zeltrax and Dino Thunder, since Dino Thunder, so like I said earlier about when I talked about Zeltrax on one of the early rankings of the video, that Zeltrax reminds me so much of Goldar when he fought against, Tommy in the Mighty Morphin days. But I mainly liked it when Goldar fought against Tommy when he was the White Ranger during the, second and half of third season of Mighty Morphin, until Lord Zed came in and fought Tommy, and knowing that Tommy was the only Ranger of all the Power Rangers that Lord Zed has ever faced. Enough said. At number 8 is Scorpina from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1. one of the most deceivingly underrated, but still yet popular, but overlooked female villains in Power Rangers history. And following her unexplained demise after the season 2 episode, Goldar's Vice Versa. You know, I rather prefer the Scorpina from the Zoo Ranger footage, also known as Lami there in Zoo Ranger, than the actress who did Scorpina in the American footage of Mighty Morphin. Because let's face it, Scorpina in the American Power Ranger footage in the episode Goldar's Vice Versa sucked. And Sabrina Liu, yeah, I figured exactly why she didn't appear for the rest of season 2 or throughout season 3 of Mighty Morphin as Scorpina. But Scorpina was just, you know, I've always liked her, and it just sucks that she had to disappear throughout, you know, the rest of Mighty Morphin with no explanation. And I just hated to see her go away like that. And I think for those that are fans of Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers are still pretty pissed that we never did had an ongoing thing with Goldar and Scorpina throughout Mighty Morphin. Because if it worked it out so well in Zoo Ranger, it could have worked it out here in Power Rangers. But knowing how cheap Saban was and how the writers and such kept, you know, were kind of a little bit schizophrenic at times, trying to come up with great episodes for Mighty Morphin to make Mighty Morphin even more great than it already is and was, I would have been fine with it, you know? But still, I do not like the Scorpina from the season 2 episode Goldar's Vice Versa. Well, they kept the costume, but the change of actors with the American actress just tried, so even though they tried to make her more Americanized than what they already did to her, I just did not like what they did to her. They just made her just bleh, you know? I just did not like, when I seen Sabrina Liu as the character, she just looked so freaking ugly when I seen her as Scorpina in the American footage. Just, ugh. What did they just do to Scorpina? I mean, she looked more hot as in the Japanese footage. I was about to say American, but she looked more hot. I mean, Scorpina looked more hot in the Japanese Zoo Ranger footage than she does here in the American Power Ranger footage. No offense. No offense. Number 7, I'm going to go with Emperor Grum of Power Rangers SPD. Now again, if I'm skipping any villains that you guys like, my apologies, but remember, this is my opinion, my list. If these are my all-time favorite Power Ranger villains, they're my all-time favorites. If they're my all-time least favorite, they're my all-time least favorite. So, stick to the list here. I think I'm going to have to split this video into 2 parts because I think I'm going too overboard with my top best and where my top worst, like I did last couple of times. Emperor Grum. Okay, there's something about him. There is something about this guy. Where do I begin with Grum? Nothing much to say, but he is one of the most complex villains of the Disney era of Power Rangers. Well, other than Mesogog, although Mesogog is great and all, but he was just, you know, great. And I just liked how funny his demise was in the final episode of SPD when he told Kruger to finish him off, and that was fun because, you know, as much as I didn't like Power Rangers SPD in the beginning, almost 10 years ago, knowing next year will be the 10th anniversary of SPD, while Dino Charge is going on. I was about to say Dino Charge or Dino Thunder or something. Sorry. And I really liked it, Grum's story in SPD, although if I could have pointed this out, but when I look at Emperor Grum, and when he talks to himself, is it just me, or is Emperor Grum the first ever considered Power Ranger villain to be a schizophrenic? Because if you watch a couple of episodes of SPD and look back at Grum, he does seem a bit schizophrenic when he talks to himself, talking about how is he going to conquer Earth, how is he going to destroy the Power Rangers and all that, and tear down the legacy of the SPD, SPD and all that. And then also, but although one of the things I did not like about Grum is him babysitting Mora, well, until he turned Mora into the grown Morgana. That's what I liked about Grum, because of his, it's just one of the things I didn't like about Grum, so. Nothing else about Grum, but for the next top 5, there is a lot to talk about those villains of Power Rangers. At 6, I suppose, because I think I'm losing count here. Number 6 is okay. At number 6 on my top 20 best Power Rangers villains list is Vrock from Power Rangers Megaforce and Super Megaforce. Pretty much the only interesting villain in Megaforce so far, Vrock is indeed on my list of one of my top favorite villains in Power Rangers and one of my top 20 best. You know, when I think of Megaforce, I do have some shades of Lost Galaxy in a way, but still, for the 20th anniversary, you still have homages to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for villains and Rangers, but, well, although some may want to compare Vrock with Rita, or well, because knowing that Vrock is the heir to the throne of Emperor Mavro and the brother of Prince Vakar, although a villain lifted from Super Megaforce / Go Kiger stuff. But I really want to compare Vrock with another villain in Power Rangers akin to him, but we'll get to him or her after that. After I talk about him on this list, because Vrock, one of the many things I liked about his design, one of the many things I like about Vrock is that he has multiple forms, and that's what makes him so interesting. He is like he's been the main villain of Megaforce the whole time. The whole time he was around, the whole time he tried to overthrow the Power Rangers, the whole time he wanted to, destroy the world. I just really like his plot. I really like his story arc as a villain. I really like how he wants to take the Rangers down. I really like the way how almost everything he tries in his plan. He really knows how to get things done ahead of time. And he is like more interesting than the rest of the Rangers are. No offense and regardless, but he is more interesting than the rest of the Rangers. Now, I can see if Vrock had his own, like, evil Megazord to go against the Rangers if it ever happened in Ghost Age, but unfortunately, according to Ghost Age, that whole subplot of that didn't exist. But if I put it if I can simmer that thought in my head of if Super Megaforce final episode would have banged in Vrocka's back part 2, well, of course, by the way, at the time when this portion of the video was made, this part of the episode, this podcast recording happened when Super Megaforce second episode of Vrock's Back Part 2 has aired, and I'll tell you, maybe in the episode review about how much I love Vrock and why he was the more interesting of the bunch later. Moving on with my top 5. All-time 5 favorite Power Ranger villains. And then, once I'm done with who are my top 20 all-time favorites of evil, I'll talk about who are the worst of evil Power Rangers had to offer that the Rangers have ever encountered with. So we're going to wrap this up with the top 20 all-time greatest Power Ranger villains ever on this list. So we're going to go ahead and round this out at number 5. At number 5, for all-time greatest Power Ranger villains, I'm going to go with this one. Now, this villain I was not expecting to put on the list, but I'm going to do it anyway. And of that, at number 5, cross your fingers, and here it is. Here's your number 5 on my list here. Dark Spectre from Power Rangers in Space. No, actually, cross him out, because I don't want to talk about that. The Psycho Rangers from Power Rangers in Space. How's that? Okay. The Psycho Rangers are at number 5. This pretty much the only evil Ranger team on my list, because they also count as villains as well. The Psycho Rangers, albeit, are one of the all-time greatest evil Ranger team in all of Power Rangers. And what makes the Psycho Rangers so unique is the way how they fight equally like the Rangers, but for an evil stance. How they look different, they seem different, they fight different, they sound different to the Rangers, because the Psycho Rangers, albeit, are just plain badass to watch, and that's why they're one of our all-time. That's why they're our all-time favorite villains of Power Rangers, and as well as evil Rangers altogether as a whole. I also like the way how they possess their own monster form when they grow. I like the way how they equally want to take down each Ranger by their respective color, like Psycho Red against the Red Ranger, Psycho Pink against the Pink Ranger, Psycho Black against the Black Ranger, so forth. But Silver Ranger, now the Psycho Silver Ranger, that was just a deploy to lure the Psycho Rangers to be believed that there would be a Psycho Silver, but you can only imagine it in your heads. But we all know that Zane was Psycho Silver just to set the Psycho Rangers up to make them believe that there is a Silver Psycho Ranger available according to the data cards that the Psycho Rangers came from. And where did the Psycho Rangers come from exactly? We know they come from data cards, but where did they really originate from? Some sort of computerized void that is hard to know to exist, or what? We don't know. But and I also like the way how they each get taken down respectively from one episode after another in space. But what really revolutionized my liking of the Psycho Rangers is when in Lost Galaxy, when To the 10th Power happened, because remember I did an episode review into the 10th Power just to accommodate Power Rangers Lost Galaxy's 15th anniversary and all. But the Psycho Rangers in Into the 10th Power, that was just one of the best known episodes of Power Rangers, and what really revolutionized how I've seen Power Rangers forever. And Time Force and Lightspeed and them don't even count off about how much your team-ups are, but your team-up episodes will never top Lost Galaxy to the 10th Power. Well, except for Forever Red and Wild Force. That's still an all-time great Power Rangers episode, Forever Red. But to the 10th Power. What makes it so special is that seeing the Psychos again is what wowed me. But when Psycho Pink was defeated in The Last of Fall, and we'll never see the Psycho Rangers again, and when Kendrix was dead, that's what really even revolutionized how I've seen Power Rangers for life, thanks to Lost Galaxy. And not only that, I like the way their overall design is, being the most diabolic versions of the Power Rangers, but mainly the Space Rangers. Now, I could see if there was a green Psycho Ranger, if Psycho Black was repainted green, knowing that Lost Galaxy has a green Ranger and not a black one. Well, it doesn't really matter within Power Rangers that it should be for a core team either to have a Black Ranger or a Green Ranger. Well, it doesn't really matter. So let's get on with our top all-time 4 of the 20. And at number 4 is also Astronema, also from Power Rangers in Space. Okay, Astronema. I have to say, she's great. I really like Astronema a lot. I really like the changes of wig. I like her wig changes from episode after episode. But out of the wigs that she had depicting her moods within each of the episodes of In Space, I would say her red wig during the last half of In Space is one of my favorites. Because when you see Astronema with that red wig, she looks like a Russian ballerina, but with red hair. Every time when you look at the wig, it does give you that sense of seeing her with that. But her all-time greatest wig would have to be the wig that she had when she first came onto the show, starting in From Out of Nowhere, the episode that she debuted in, all the way to the end of In Space, and then Lost Galaxy with Protect the Quasar Saber. When Corone was reintroduced, the wig and the concept of Astronema was dropped, and so forth. Although the last time we'll ever see Astronema was in Facing the Past, where Corone had to seek so much redemption after doing so much evil the previous season, and so forth, and the rest of what had to offer with her character, what made her so likable within of all the Power Rangers. But nonetheless, she is still one of the greatest female villains in Power Rangers. I really like her story of her being being corrupted by evil, but was once good and tries to seek good again. But the only way how is the Red Ranger has to free her from her evil personality, and they could be, brother and sister again, after after so long of her kidnapping by the forces of evil. So, and also, one of the things I've always liked about Astronema is her story arc with the Red Ranger and Andros, and what makes her so unique, and so much like that. And one of the many things I've always liked about Astronema was what I did not know about for her costume aesthetic. For those who may know, for those who have never seen the movie Spawn, based on the Todd McFarlane comic book, Astronema's costume actually came from Melinda Clarke's character from the movie Spawn. Well, unlike Linkara when he said, "And I do not care," I do care that that costume did come from the movie Spawn. I didn't know that from the get-go. It seems like whenever these big-name Hollywood blockbuster movies of the late 90s come out, and when Power Rangers want to use those costumes for their anything for their shows, it seems like Power Rangers wants to use those costumes to make their shows even greater. Just like as much as I've seen the Starship Trooper uniforms in Lost Galaxy, although I didn't see the Starship Troopers movie until some years later, but seeing Astronema's costume being used from Melinda Clarke's character from the movie Spawn, that's what made me want to wonder where did that costume came from. And until I saw the movie Spawn, I saw Melinda Clarke play her character off, whatever her character was, some dominatrix of a villain, I will go ahead and say that, well, she did use that costume from Spawn, and that's the truth, basically, about it. And the many different wigs of Astronema. Like, one time she has a red wig, one time she has a purple wig, one time she has multiple black wigs. Well, she has more black wigs and white wigs than, And I also like the way, well, in the earlier episodes of In Space, before, she turned into a cyborg, hybrid of a human, she had this sort of a 1980s diva vibe to her character, but knowing Astronema, she's an intergalactic conqueror and war general who knows how to get things done and not mess around, unlike the previous leading female villain of Power Rangers that tends to screw up a lot of things. And that's what I really like about Astronema, is that she doesn't make the stupid mishaps that Divatox did, because, well, let's face it, Divatox was just too much of a freaking idiotic goofball of a female leading villain. So that's why I've always preferred Astronema over Divatox. But Divatox, I only liked her in the Turbo movie, but within the Turbo season, she just, I don't even know where to put my finger on that, or thumb. So, but one of the things I just didn't caught on to is that Astronema did have this 1980s vibe to her, character with the wigs and her personality. That's one of the things I always liked about her, because it's just the way how she just comes off, So I don't have anything else to say about Astronema, but she's one of the greatest female villains of Power Rangers, one of the best Power Rangers ever had, and one of the best developed female villains, and I have to say, she's real great. Number three of my top 20 all-time greatest Power Ranger villains. This one, okay, believe it or not, this one may be your all-time favorite, but I'm not so much as of mine. So of that, I'm going to go ahead and say Ransik, also from Power Rangers Time Force. I understand why Ransik is the most liked, one of the most likable villains in Power Rangers, because it's his but it's the way how he's portrayed, and also the actor behind him, Vernon Wells, gives him a very solid performance, more like an Oscar worthy performance. But when on television, you don't give them Oscar noms, you just give them some sort of nominations of a TV show. And I really think that watching Ransik's performance in Time Force, it really makes me wonder what other villain in Power Rangers can have a solid performance like this, and how are they so great? But when Ransik was made, because the reason why Ransik was made, because one of the villains in Time Ranger was the leading villain, and knowing Time Ranger, the Sentai that Time Force was based on, they did not have a Ransik-like villain in Sentai. But Gluto was the leading villain of Time Force. Or was it Fraks' counterpart? I don't know, because it was confusing to me when I was watching Time Ranger, looked up information on it from wikis, the Power Rangers fan site, Ranger Central, or Super Sentai Time Capsule website or whatever, I came across Rancic and his character and realized that Rancic is 100% American made. Because knowing Power Rangers, they only had a character like Rancic because he's only American made. He didn't come from Time Ranger. He was all 100% original, and I really like his design. That's and his performance. Well, actually, both things, all three of the above. His prejudice toward robots, and his design, his overall concept and visual aesthetic of his costume, and the actor behind the villain. And that's what makes Rancic very likable. And although some people may want to compare Rancic with Magneto from X-Men all you want, but when really I don't want to see any further comparison with Rancic because, well, I just don't think I can. I just can't even put my foot on how much Rancic is so liked. But I had to put him on this list because he's just, you know, he's a crime boss. He is very, well, to me, I think he is sympathetic, but most will say he's not because I don't know what to say about that, but he is still great. And also him being the father of Nadira, I really like the way how they took that twist of making what made Nadira from Time Ranger being a whatever from what she was in the Sentai to the Power Rangers version being the daughter of Rancic and Rancic being the father of Nadira. I really like that. And speaking of which, number 2 is one of my all-time greatest female villains of Power Rangers. I could have put her in number 1 just to cheat out Rita or Zed, but this female villain, you know who is my all-time favorite female villain within of all the Power Rangers. You know who this is because I brought her up. She's one of the greatest, and one of the greatest Power Rangers had to offer, and one of the last but greatest female villains up until I wanted to stop watching. Up until that season ended, and yes, I have to spoil it to you. At number 2 of my all-time greatest villains list of Power Rangers, I'm going to go with Trakina from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. So for the 3rd time in a row, 3 villains from Lost Galaxy are on my list of top 20 best villains, while out of the top 20 worst. But unfortunately, Trakina is no way in the world as terrible as you would expect. But when you see Trakina in Lightspeed Rescue from Trakina's Revenge, that was just a terrible performance. So is the Trakina from the Super Legends video game, but the video game is not canon to the show's to Power Rangers' universe. But you get my point there. You know, I can talk about Trakina all day and what makes me like her so much, but I can't spend for almost an hour talking about my all-time favorite villains of Power Rangers and just, you know, get to the contrary, why I like those villains anyway, based on their designs or performance. But it feels like to me, I prefer more of the visual aesthetic of the characters now than I do with the performance. And that's not right, because when you talk about villains of Power Rangers, you know how great they are. But sometimes you don't want to talk about characters like her, like Trakina or whoever a Power Rangers that's female or male or whoever. You know what? You know, everyone has their favorites. If they say that Rancic or so, Lord Zed, Rita, or Dark Spectre is one of the better villains out of all the villains of Power Rangers, then that's your opinion. But if I say Trakina, Astronema, or whoever else is one of the best in my opinion, they are part of my list here. But when you go ahead and say what you want, and you know sometimes you guys can say what you want about her, but I think Trakina is one of the best Power Ranger villains ever. But to me, unlike Astronema from In Space, it's hard to imagine Trakina in a much lighter stance at the end of Lost Galaxy, really, because out of the things that she has done and of what she went through throughout Lost Galaxy's run, of the 33 episodes she was in, from Race to the Rescue to the final episode of Journey's End of the season and Lost Galaxy altogether, I wish there was some sense of redemption to her character. But due to the fact that they had to revert her character to be the leading villain of Lost Galaxy after her father Scorpius gets killed off, they could have at least, even by the final episode, they could have at least redeemed her character. You know, I love Trakina as a villain, but what if she had, again, some form of redemption, like Astronema did in Power Rangers in Space? I mean, what if that ever happened? I wish it happened, but no, she has to remain a villain. And like what Estrama pointed out when she saw Corone, her split image, her split personality of what Corone became of. Once evil, always evil. So Trakina, you cannot see her as a good person inside at times because it ain't going to work. Although a couple of female villains in later Power Ranger seasons, like Camille and Jungle Fury. Now, Camille has done some good, well, actually up until the final episode, but throughout Jungle Fury, she was totally evil. She was sort of borderline in a way, but in comparison to Trakina, now I think what makes me like her so much is her costume. Everybody loves her costume. Everybody loves Amy Roll. Amy Roll, the actress who played her in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, gave the character a splendid performance. And even after Lost Galaxy, what just shook me was seeing her marry her co-star, who is one of the Rangers, and that is the Green Galaxy Ranger. And that's how Reggie and Amy became a more recognizable married couple within the Power Rangers, actually outside of the show. But that's just you know. And then the amount, and then also Trakina's different forms, the green armored form, which didn't last long. I wish it did. Then everybody, and also the form that Trakina possessed in one episode that had a lot of us guys when we were little or so got in all the gawking of when she was Tracy in the Stolen Beauty episode. They got us all gawking, and actually, in fact, Stolen Beauty, believe it or not, the episode when Trakina had to was very pissed off that a lot of the girls on Terra Venture were so pretty, was more prettier than she is. When she sent the monster crew mummy to go down and steal all the beauty from all the girls on Terra Venture, including the Pink and Yellow Rangers of all the women of Terra Venture, she would go ahead and possess a human form, and that's what made me like Trakina so much, because of her human state, which never was explicit within all of Lost Galaxy to begin with. But if Trakina was ever, like I said, if she was ever reformed in the finale, I would have seen her with a different attire as a human, instead of the red business suit she wore, and with her long locks of black hair shown. But it would have been great if she had a human form in the final episode after being, the metamorphosis phase that she had to go through is once she is in her black form fitted suit with the insectoid based parts of her costume, including the headset. When you mutate into a mutant insect, you cannot go back to being human. And when you're crushed by the Rangers, you cannot come back to life. But guess what? Trakina's Revenge and Lightspeed Rescue brought her back to life, and I did not like it. And when they turned her into that giant demon monster in Lightspeed Rescue for the Lost Galaxy Lightspeed Rescue team up, I was really pissed. They should have at least made Tri-Skull a villain who could have been some useful in Trakina's Revenge to be that monster, because I watched Go-Go 5 versus Ginga Man, and I've seen Tri-Skull become that demon monster that they made Trakina to be in the American version of Power Rangers, and instead of Tri-Skull, but Tri-Skull should have been potentially that demon beast that Trakina actually is. But I did not even want to look forward to see her in the demon beast form, because I don't think she was that powerful as that demon beast, because it's not really worth it. I'll discuss more about something like this when I discuss Trakina's Revenge next season for PRLostGalaxy2014's episode reviews of Power Rangers, of my top best episodes of the show and my top worst episodes of the show. In fact, there are only a few episodes of Power Rangers that are indeed the worst, like Zio's Snow Business 3-parter, and the Wedding 3-parter from Season 2 of Mighty Morphin, and Trakina's Revenge, and Once a Ranger from Operation Overdrive, and Clash of the Red Rangers. Yeah, those episodes are indeed some of the worst Power Rangers that ever offered. And though we do know about what happened behind the scenes before this whole Trakina's Revenge thing happened in Lightspeed Rescue, we all know that Amy Roll didn't want to was originally accepted to do the role of reprising her role of Trakina, but when she read the script, however, she was pissed off because she knew that her character was going to get more screen time over the little girl. Well, guess what? The little girl, who is all grown up, is no longer an actress, so that's a good thing we don't have to worry about her ass anymore, because the actress who was that little girl in that episode cannot act anyway. She could never act. So I'm going to say that when I do my Trakina's Revenge episode review of Power Rangers sometime next year, following the 15th anniversary of Lightspeed Rescue, while Lost Galaxy's 15th anniversary will cease by the time I do my episode review of Journey's End. But still, Trakina is one of my all-time favorite female villains of Power Rangers. I like her costume. I like Amy Miller role, or just Amy role, despite her marriage with the Green Galaxy Ranger now has been lasting for 15 years. I really like, and even after 15 years, their marriage would still get stronger. But I really, I wish, instead of her being just a plain villain, being the greatest villain. Although if it happened with Astronomer being evil throughout the whole series, and then by the end she turns good and redeems herself, that could have happened with Trakina in my opinion. But unfortunately, like a lot of villains in Lost Galaxy, they have to get killed off because of what they've done throughout the series. But I just wish Trakina had some sense of redemption at the end. But no, like I stated, once evil, always evil. So you cannot see her as a good person at the end. My apologies there. I can talk about her all day, but I don't want to waste so much time talking about Trakina throughout the whole video because she's just, forget it. So here we are, my number one all-time greatest villain of all the Power Rangers. We know this villain is indeed one of the greatest of all the Power Rangers, and well, we know who this is. At number one, Lord Zed of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Season 2, Season 3, Zeo. Well, actually throughout all the Power Rangers. Let's just say that. Because Lord Zed, one of the greatest villains of all the Power Rangers, and one of the best villains Mighty Morphin had to offer and throughout all the Power Rangers. And that's what I like about Lord Zed. His design. He is just, he is one of the most complex villains Mighty Morphin has ever had to offer. And one of the best that we have had throughout for those that are still fans of Mighty Morphin and why we like him so much. Now, the reason why I didn't want to put Rita up there is because, well, I feel that Rita Repulsa is overrated. Because I understand Rita is the first villain the Power Rangers had to face, and knowing that she was the first villain within the debut in the beginning of Power Rangers, but I decided Lord Zed for the hell of it, for those that like Lord Zed and or Rita and Zed together. But what I did not like about Lord Zed up until the mid section of Mighty Morphin all the way through the end of the Zordon era is his marriage with Rita Repulsa, and we know exactly where the controversy was there with Lord Zed's character. Knowing the first entry of Power Rangers of Mighty Morphin, and throughout Mighty Morphin altogether, the reason why Lord Zed was revigorated to be more family-friendly of a villain and more comedic and a little lighthearted for a villain while still doing a lot of evil things to take down the Power Rangers is that when Lord Zed was... since 2014 is the 20th anniversary of Lord Zed's introduction into Power Rangers, and the 20th anniversary of Mighty Morphin's second season with the Thunderzords, Tommy's White Ranger powers, and Rocky, Adam, and Aisha's introduction into Power Rangers, and 20 years of Serpentera, I just realized why did Lord Zed, even when I was a kid, why did Lord Zed change his character by 40 episodes into Season 2, and why did they do Zed the way they did? Well, there's the explanation. If we remember from the Mutiny Part 1, when he overthrew Rita and didn't want her anymore, because despite consecutive failures of trying to take down the Power Rangers, and he comes in to take over her palace, her moon palace, he wanted to take charge and try to do things in his own hands, and to take the Rangers down, and something else. Sorry for hiccuping, but something else that made me wonder, and even up to now, 20 years later, even though I was only 2 years old when the second season of Mighty Morphin was out and all that, and when I heard of Lord Zed and the Thunderzords and stuff 20 years ago, although as a small 2-year-old child, I knew then and there, well, Lord Zed, when I first saw him in Power Rangers, he wasn't scary. Now, Ivan Ooze from the Mighty Morphin movie, when I was a kid, he was scary. But as I gotten older, I'm not afraid of Ivan anymore. Now, I wasn't afraid of... Now, I didn't really... Well, as a kid, I didn't really care if Lord Zed was scary or not, but he was just a badass villain. Although he never fought any of the Rangers, well, the only Ranger he fought was Tommy in Season 3 in the Changing of the Zords 3 part. Well, we know that episode, one of the finest moments of Lord Zedd's lifetime as a villain in Power Rangers, that he ever fought any of the Rangers, and the only time ever since. And I just really like his design and everything, but what brought an uproar to his character following his introduction was his frightening appeal to children back in 1994. Now, thanks a lot to all you parents out there back then, although my parents, well, my mom and dad, when they were watching Power Rangers alongside me with me before my brother was even born and all that, they never found Lord Zedd scary. You didn't hear my dad and mom, well, until her death, complain about how scary Lord Zedd was when he first came onto the show. They actually liked the Lord Zedd. But all for those that out there all of us that are like 20-something-year-olds that grew up with Power Rangers now or so, or older than 20, that watched the show when they were like 10 or 11 years old and saw Lord Zedd. Now, that was when all of you were out there back in 1994 were complaining why Lord Zedd was so fucking scary. So, how the hell is he that frightening the kids? I mean, we understand his satanic design. Okay? We see that. But you don't hear. But again, you don't. Well, if we had a villain in a later, newer season of Power Rangers up to this point, now we're in the year 2014. 2014 is almost over. 2015 is almost here. But if we had a new season of Power Rangers where we had a villain like Lord Zedd with a very frightening aesthetic and visual appeal to his costume and design, you would flip your asses off. But when really we don't have that anymore, because when we understand the 1990s was such a wild decade, even though I was born in that decade. And I grew up throughout the 1990s and the 2000s. Great God, I am. I'm like being around these little tykes and stuff of the 2010s with their shitty shows and such. But Lord Zedd, he's supposed to be evil. He's supposed to be dark and scary as a villain. Every supervillain. If you look at every other supervillain of other TV shows, movies, and stuff that are also targeted at the kids, like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Darth Vader from Star Wars or so, they are scary. But they're not as scary as we think. But when you look at Lord Zedd, because of a satanic design, you parents back in 1994, and now here you probably reminiscing 20 years later and wonder, why did we do that to the kids? I mean, our kids loved Power Rangers when they were little. So I guess we misunderstood and underestimated Lord Zedd, but he's still a scary villain, but still in our thoughts, but he's still great, and I didn't really think he was all that great. But, look, he's a villain. This is why he ended up on everyone's list of all-time greatest villains in Power Rangers, especially on my own list of all-time top 10, 20 list of the 20 greatest Power Ranger villains. And sorry for those that are also Mighty Morphin fans watching. Sorry, I did not put Rita on this list because I'm not a fan of Rita Repulsa. Never was, although she was the first villain the Power Rangers encountered, though they never fought her, but only fought her monsters. But you get my point there. And the reason why Lord Zedd was changed from being that grim, scary type of villain was what led to Rita to come back into the series and make Lord Zedd a little bit more child-friendly. So that way, instead of him being more violent and scary, they decided to make him, less threatening, and then also leading to Rita and Zedd's marriage. That's what even dumbed Zedd's character down. That was one of my criticisms about Lord Zedd, though he's still my favorite villain, and I prefer him over Rita, but Rita, I mean, well, Barbara Goodson, I like your voice role, but I think I liked you doing the voice of Rita in the first season, but throughout all of Power Rangers, I thought your voice of Rita was kind of, I don't want to talk about it. And, I don't understand what to think, but, thinking about it, come next year, 20 years following Rita and Zedd's marriage, and the 20th anniversary of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, I'm still going to have those thoughts and effects from their marriage of evil. When knowing that actually, in fact, when everyone will agree that, Rita and Zedd are more powerful together than with Zedd without Rita and Rita without Zedd. So, but still, I think ruining the marriage of having Rita and Zed together kind of did ruin Zed's character for me, but what the hell. Well, guys, I'm going to split this episode. I'm going to split this podcast into 2 parts. So the next portion of this podcast is on my top 20 or so worst villains of Power Rangers. So let's go ahead and proceed to part 2 of podcast episode 112.